The mortal remains of a couple were found at an Indian forest in the city of Udaipur. This discovery was gruesome to say the least, not only because of the state in which the remains were found, but also because of the object used to commit this heinous crime. It shook the entire village in the city of Udaipur due to the modus operandi of the perpetrator's crime. Let's discover more about this twisted case of love, hate, and honor. But before that, if you're interested in the dark, please subscribe to my channel. It's too dark. And with that, let's relive the story. It was in the wee morning hours of 18 November 22 that the constables rushed to Gogunda forest to investigate the alleged crime that had occurred at the site. They cut through the crowd to find the lifeless remains of a couple who had been discovered by the villagers in an unattired state. It was evident by the looks of it that this was a well planned homicide. They both had multiple stab wounds, crushed bones, and their skin had been peeled right off their bodies. The identities of both the victims was later revealed to be Rahul Meena and Sonu Kumar. They were both married but not to each other. The police questioned around 200 people and checked the footage of around 50 CCTVs to find clues. Based on the technical evidences, they nabbed the village Tantric and took him into custody. But first, let's learn a little more about the victims before we find out what happened to them. Rahul was a teacher who lived in the village of Gogunda. His marriage was going through a rough patch, and so he decided to visit a tantric. For those of you who don't know, tantrics are practitioners of occult sciences. The tantric named Bhalesh, who had been living in the village for about 8 years, used to give amulets to people for their troubles and performed rituals to allegedly heal away his followers' pains. He was a very honored and revered person in the village due to his supernatural knowledge, and he stayed in a temple where his followers would visit him for fulfillment of their wishes. Hoping to mend his marriage, Rahul visited Bhalesh and continued meeting him regularly. On one such visit, he met Sonu Kaur for the first time, who was also a loyal follower of Bhalesh and was going through a similar unhappy marriage situation with a spouse. When they met each other, they immediately hit it off and started visiting the godmen together more often. This gave them an opportunity to see each other and confide in each other's problems and worries. However, Rahul's marital bond with his wife was going downhill. They would regularly argue, and Rahul would allegedly resort to domestic violence on a regular basis. Rahul's wife was shattered by her husband's behavior, and she also resorted to visiting the same godmen who Rahul frequented. Now, Bhalesh knew that Rahul and Sonu were getting close to one another and was not happy about it. And therefore, when Rahul's wife visited him, he disclosed the entire episode of her husband's proximity with Sonu. Rahul's wife was very angry and devastated. She started having worse fights with Rahul after getting to know her husband's infidelity. Both Rahul and Sonu were infuriated with Bhalesh after what he did. They both paid him a visit and confronted him with threats of spreading rumors about him if he doesn't back off. Now we need to realize that Bhalesh was a very well known person within the village fraternity. So he was very impulsively bothered by this threat initially. He later thought that they both couldn't do much harm because of the goodwill he had built amongst the villagers in the past. Rahul and Sonu had started spreading rumors against the Tantric, and this went on for over 5 months. It started pinching Bhalesh now, and around this time, he started taking things more seriously and devised a plan to eliminate both of them. In the days to come, he called both of them on the pretext of wanting to mend their fractured marriages. He assured that he wouldn't do anything against them, instead, advising them both to focus on their respective families. Having somehow convinced them to leave each other as this was the right thing to do, Bhalesh faked concern for the duo and ultimately managed to convince them to part ways as per the steps he ritualized. On the pretext of performing the ritual, Bhalesh called them to meet at Sukhadia Circle in the center of the village on the evening of 15th November. Upon arriving at the location, Rahul and Sonu realized that this was not a secluded area. They didn't want to be seen with each other in a public area because this was a small society where villagers knew each other well, and Rahul and Sonu did not wish to be a part of any such gossip. The Tantric knew this very well and hence suggested that they move to a forest area to perform this ritual, to which they both agreed. Once they had reached the forest, the Tantric chanted a few verses and told them not to meet each other again. What happens next to Rahul and Sonu was not something they could have ever imagined in their worst nightmares. Since this was the last time they were going to meet, it is said that they requested Bhalesh to give them some privacy to be close with each other just one last time. He agreed and pretended to move away from them, but in reality, he was just keeping a watchful eye on them from a distance. When they both were almost unclothed and getting cozy, the tantric poured a bottle of Fevikwik on them, a common superglue available in India. The bottle had equivalent of 50 sachets of superglue poured into it. The tantric had prepared this bottle well in advance. He had procured 50 sachets of Fevikwik from a local shop to which no one raised any suspicions because he used the superglue regularly to prepare the amulets. He poured the entire bottle of superglue on their sensitive region, and they both were stuck together because of this. While pouring this, the tantric got some in his hand also, which was later discovered during the questioning. The superglue was only poured to immobilize them so that it would become easier for the tantric to finish them off. Both Rahul and Sonu were screaming in pain at this point. It was so sudden that they were yet to understand what had happened to them. But before they could think of anything, the tantric came with a knife and started stabbing both of them. Writhing in intolerable pain from being stuck together with superglue, they weren't able to defend themselves. In an attempt to prevent further injuries from the stabbing, they tried to separate from each other, but this further added to their physical trauma as they were ripping their skin off in the process. The tantric continued his attacks, targeting their sensitive areas again and again. Rahul's sensitive part was detached from his body, and Sonu's sensitive area was stabbed repeatedly. They were both bleeding out in gushes by then, but this was still not enough for the tantric. After stabbing both of them multiple times, he went on to crush their faces with stones. He repeatedly flattened their faces with stones till their faces were unrecognizable beyond measure. The only reason he did this so that it would be impossible to identify them, or so he thought. Let this tragic story serve as a reminder appearances can deceive, and even those we hold in high regard may conceal malevolence. It is a sombering lesson that trust should be earned cautiously. The virtue can sometimes mask vice, even within the most esteemed. This was the second story of the Superglue series. See you next week with the final and the most bewildering story of this series. Until then, stay sharp, stay safe.